Good morning. This is Dick Black. Welcome to Focus on the News. This is July the 17th, and today we're going to discuss how the American Library Association undermines children's morality. We really got a gangbuster group of participants today, and I will introduce them once I do a very quick update on the Ukraine war. We'll go through that, and then we'll get into our main topic. So let me start off with the state of the Ukraine war. The New York Times over the weekend published a very fine article. It's entitled "Small, Hidden, and Deadly: Mines Stymie Ukraine's Counteroffensive." And the byline to the article says, "To gain ground, Ukraine forces have to make their way through a variety and density of Russian landmines they never imagined." Now, as our listeners know, I seldom agree with with the New York Times. However, they did a very good job describing the bloody horrors of Ukraine's stalled counteroffensive. The war, I sincerely believe, is hopeless. It's lost. Yet the Biden White House insists that Ukrainian soldiers must fight and die for as long as it takes. Right now, there are wave after wave of brave Ukrainian soldiers who go into these minefields where explosions cost them their legs and their eyesight. They go home crippled if they get home at all. Yet we have congressmen and the cocaine snorting sons of big shot politicians who want this massacre to go on as long as possible. Because the longer it goes on, the more they can line their pockets with slices of the $113 billion we've sent over there. Those men are greedy cowards who never fight themselves. Instead, they send brave kids off to war and profit from their suffering. In any event, I think it's inhuman to continue throwing men into the minefields just to impress NATO's cocktail-sipping globalists. The war is done and it's lost, and we really should let peace return to that crippled land. But in any event, and these are my opinions, these may not be shared by our guests. I don't want to associate them with anyone but myself. However, with that, let me get into our main topic this morning. We're joined by Suzanne Satterfield and by Laura Robinson. Now, Suzanne and Laura Robinson are truly heroic figures in the uprising against the decadence within the public schools here in Loudoun County. Many of you will recall we had just an uproar within the school board meeting, shut down the meeting, people being arrested, the school board running out the back door, and that set off a shock wave across America, across the world, really, where people just woke up and said, what is happening with our schools? So Suzanne and Laura have really led the organization of this whole movement and have done tremendous work. Laura was involved in putting together a pamphlet which attempts to show what is being stocked in the school libraries without being overly graphic. It's a very delicate balancing act, but a picture's worth 1,000 words. So, and today we're also joined by Dan Kleinman, who for 10 years has run a website dealing with the library crisis that we have, and it's called Safe Libraries. And so Dan, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
And Suzanne, we're very pleased to have you with us again.
Thank you.
And Laura, also thank you for joining us today. Well, let me just start off, if I could. Suzanne, you had mentioned to me this article that appeared recently about Montana withdrawing from the American Library Association. Could you comment a little bit on that? What took place there?
Well, they have a new person at the helm of the ALA who is a self-proclaimed Marxist. She happens to be lesbian. It's out there, so I can say that. And I believe the post has since been taken down. But she believes that Marxism, socialism is the way that our world should be, and Montana has realized, and I believe before them, actually, Wyoming actually got out of it before she became on board. But again, we realize that these heads of these organizations have so much power in how they're run, and it's unbelievable. So Montana's like, you know what, we're done. We're done because you're just going to keep recommending books that are going to, take this country further down the path of destruction. And, we can run without you. And that's the thing, is these organizations fail to see that, sure, it's going to be a little bit more work. They have to re-engineer what they want to do, how they're going to do it, but people can survive without these organizations. And I think it's great. And I hope more people join Montana.
Well, hopefully so. I hope that this starts something. Dan, you're familiar with the American Library Association. We grew up thinking of librarians as the soft-spoken little old ladies with white tennis shoes who would go around telling people, shh, quiet. People are reading, and they were in the old movies as these paragons of virtue. Is that the case today?
No, that is completely gone. It's been changed from within for decades. I've been at this for 25 years, not 10 years. This happened decades ago, that this organization changed from what you just described into what it actually is now today.
Yes. Well, and Laura, you know something about the types of books that are being stocked by these librarians. Can you give us a discussion about what are those books like, and how have you worked to expose this stuff?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say Suzanne is spot on, because we conservatives have been sitting back for decades, as Dan points out, watching all of our institutions that have cultural influence being taken over by the left. We've seen the universities, the media, the health industry, the Bar Association, and even our election registration information center being taken over by the left. And we're starting to wake up now. And not only the ALA, but I have here an article that came out that's the summer reading list from the NEA, and this is for educators. And it's grouped into categories. And this morning I decided to create my own categories of what I would like to see on this. So here are some that I would like to see for our educators. How America Freed Europe in World War II, the sacrifices of American military and their families, and the brilliance of the creators of the Constitution. I think those would be excellent books for our educators to be reading as they're getting ready to prepare for the academic year. Here, in fact, are the categories. One of them is just fun to read. Okay, that's fine. One is books to celebrate or understand Juneteenth. Okay, fine. But here's my favorite category, ban books. Celebrate the freedom to read. So they are encouraging, I know, Dan, you've seen this, they are encouraging the educators to read the books that the parents want to take out of the schools. And at the top of the list is this book called Genderqueer that we talked about last time. This is the flyer that I put together. It's focused on Loudoun County Public Schools. It's called Just the Facts, the Truth About Books in Loudoun County Public Schools. And I feature in it Genderqueer, and I don't know if you can see that, but this is a graphic image of two girls. One girl has something strapped to her body, and the other girl is sucking on it. And the caption is, I can't wait to have your bleep in my mouth. I'm going to give you the blank job of your life. Then I want you inside of me. These are the books that the NEA is encouraging the educators to read, ostensibly to share their philosophy with their students.
You know, I was a career prosecutor in the military, and mostly supervising, sort of like the military equivalent of a U.S. attorney. But when I was in court prosecuting criminal cases, had we had children exposed to a book like this, under congressional law, the Uniform Code of Military Justice enacted by the U.S. Congress, I could have established every element of the offense of indecent liberties with a child. I could have gotten a conviction with a jury of peers, and probably for exposing a child to a book like Genderqueer, with the photographs and the verbiage in that book, I probably could have gotten a sentence of somewhere between 2 and 3 years confinement at Fort Leavenworth Federal Prison. Now, and I will tell you, I once did an investigation within Fort Leavenworth Prison, and I will tell you, you talk about a big house that was a very serious place. It was spooky just walking in there as an inspector and having those huge steel doors clang behind you. That is the type of punishment that people would have received back several decades ago. Today, we say, let's give this to children. Suzanne, can you've been so much at the forefront of the battle to recapture our schools and to reform them from the atmosphere of racial hatred and moral decadence that has replaced the old environment. What is the purpose, do you think, in showing these things to children? Is there some educational purpose that you can discern?
Nothing academically, Senator Black. It's all for, my belief is to make children comfortable with engaging in adult acts, acts that many other adults may not even engage in. But it goes down to the same thing with having opposite sex sharing safe spaces of others. It's to break down children's natural instinct, because if you look even like at these drag shows and so forth, you'll see some pictures captured of young children where they're mystified. They're like, what's in front of me? What's happening? That is a natural reaction that they are trying to take away from them. And that's really all it is to break down the family, to break down children, and to put them in a light that sadly, puts them in very dangerous situations. In fact, I was watching a video recently. A lot of us have probably all heard about Alfred Kinsey, and he was actually had testified in California years back when they were looking at coming down on pedophilias as they should, and come down with stronger sentencing. And he wound up, it was through his testimony that they changed route, and they, did not go forward with those harsher penalties. And that is what's been used for our laws throughout, to break down the barriers of pedophilia and normalize it. And as you know, about the terms MAPS, about males attracted people, I forget what it is, minor attracted people. It's so gross, I try to put half of it out of my mind. But and what's interesting to me, and mind you, I truly, believe there's all kinds of people in our world. Try to be respectful. Everybody's not like you. But I find it interesting when you look at Randy Weingartner, and who is, I don't even think she was a lifetime lesbian. And you look at now this American, liberties person, where their personal preferences, and why and to bring it down to children, and bring it down to make it also so graphic and sexual, as if there's no respectfulness in people that may be same-sex attracted. Everything that it's from a perverted view. That's and I actually was blocked by the NEA last week, and in the last week or two. And I didn't put anything offensive out there. I just post things to them, like reminding them that they are propaganda machines, that they do really nothing for teachers, and they definitely don't do anything positive to help children.
I think that's certainly true. And you sort of alluded to the fact that this pervasive sexuality within the public schools is designed to groom children. Now, what is grooming? Grooming is where you have homosexual and homosexual sympathizers who introduce young children at a sexually inappropriate age. I mean, children shouldn't be exposed to any type of sexuality at younger ages, whether it's normal or whatever. But the idea is you introduce them to these really bizarre sexual concepts at a very early age, and you break down their God-given inherent resistance to advances by homosexual pedophiles. And that's really where all of this is going. There is widespread grooming of children within the public schools, with the ultimate goal of rescinding the thousands of laws and rules that bar pedophiles from preying on children. Dan, there was a mention made of Alfred Kinsey. You're familiar with him, I suppose. Could you tell us a little bit about how all of this business originated?
Well, I can tell you from the point of view of the American Library Association, it's my belief that they're the ones who originated all this stuff. I got this belief from an article I read by a University of Houston professor called Rita Kogensen. And she wrote about how the American Library Association came about to adding the word age to its Library Bill of Rights over 50 years ago. And it came from basically a Marxist guy with Marxist beliefs, and they added that word age because the Marxists have always targeted American, well, not just American, but children, to sexualize them, because that does the things that you've been describing and makes them easier to, to control. So with the word, now the article not only includes the addition of the word age, but it also includes how the American Library Association got communities and school boards to stop doing what they know is right and to start doing what they know is wrong by changing the language, by taking the power away from the school boards and the parents and switching it over to the librarians and the teachers and the young adult authors like Judy Blume, for example. So these people worked on changing how we viewed these things as into something that had to do with rights, the rights of children to see this stuff. Children don't have rights to see this in schools. And how do we know that? Well, the Supreme Court said that in 1982 in Board of Education versus PICA, which allows schools to remove educationally unsuitable and pervasively vulgar material forthwith or immediately. So we know this. But this is how the American Library Association, working with people trying to sell their wares, essentially changed how everything is today, added the word age to the Library Bill of Rights. And the scariest part of this all is that the Library Bill of Rights is now being incorporated into laws, like it has been already in Illinois, and it's heading for other states too, like New Jersey and Michigan and Massachusetts. So the Library Bill of Rights is being incorporated into law specifically, and the Library Bill of Rights has that age word in there, which is this Marxist ideal that came in there. And so it's just getting in through the back door, essentially. This stuff where kids are reading these inappropriate books, this didn't come out of nowhere. This is literally decades of efforts by these librarians. So long have they worked on this that they now feel free to just elect a Marxist president. And mind you, this Marxist president only had 5,000 votes, and the other guy had like 4,500 votes. So basically 500 librarians elected this person to now make it obvious that the American Library Association is just targeting our children nowadays with indoctrination and sexualization. Yes.
Well, and I think again, when I had mentioned about her being gay, I think because of the whole world of inclusiveness, that's their shoe-in, right? If you don't elect this person because they have been public about their sexual preference,
Right.
then you are going to be marked as, a hater, etc.
Yeah.
So it's like, and what's mind-boggling again to me is for them to bring down, hey, they're down to the perversion level to children. In fact, one of the, it's only one in LCPS, but I did find it after somebody else on Twitter put about this book. It's called Wait What? A Comic Book Guide to Relationships, Bodies, and Growing Up. And in this other mom in Texas that said it was in elementary schools. This is one middle school. And but it says that the book is recommended for fourth graders. But what I want to also point out was so many of these books, I'm sure, and we've all been aware, it's comic, right? It's graphics. It's made to look lighter. Why? Because it's driven. In this book, there's pages that you finish drawing the picture of genitalia down to the pubic hair.
Yeah.
And our kids need this. Why? This is so important. And I believe this author, co-authors are gay. And why is that so important?
Yeah. And just so everybody realizes, this is not just our opinions. We can show the American Library Association, for example, saying this. There is a video where this person is training librarians, and she says, "We know these works are sexually inappropriate for children, but we're going to reframe them." That is her word. We're going to reframe them as diversity and inclusion. So this is not just our opinions that this is happening. This is what they're training people to do. This is why it's happening anywhere. You can watch this video for yourself. It is a jaw dropper to see this person just come out and say it. But she thinks she's teaching librarians and is not talking to the public.
I've looked at hundreds of these books, and I see that there's an agenda. It's broken down by elementary school, middle school, and high school. And in elementary school, there's a book behind me, if you can see it, called What's the Big Secret? And it shows pictures of a little boy and a little girl, and it labels all their body parts, including the private parts. So it's an effort to break down that natural inclination not to talk about your private parts, but it's just like a private parts, just like an arm or a leg. And then when it gets into middle school, the themes get pretty anti people who are non-inclusive. If people don't agree, then they're called bigots in these books, and they're called unaccepting, and they're called all kinds of names, especially if somebody is religious. So that's part of the agenda too. And then by the time they get to high school, they are sexually graphic. And Suzanne, one of the reasons that they are in comic book form is because the laws about pornography state that if something is depicted in a comic book fashion, it's not pornographic. So one of the arguments about these books in the schools, by the schools themselves, is that children are exploring their gender identity. They need access to these books. Why can't they have them? Why does the right want to ban them? And my answer to that is the school is not the place for children to be exploring their gender identity. The school has absolutely no obligation to provide books for kids to explore their gender identity. The schools are for education, for excellence in education. And there are many other sources of these books. The public library, the internet, some trusted sources on the internet, they do not need to be in the library. And by not having them there, we are not bigots who don't want to be inclusive of other lifestyles.
Well, it is interesting where we have ended up. I was in school down in Miami, public school, when they first introduced sex ed. Now, sex ed at first was very biological thing. It didn't involve various acts and so forth. It simply informed people of the physical aspects of how babies are conceived and born. But I recall the teacher, she's a very nice woman, and she got up and she preceded the class by saying that the Miami school system had decided that we were going to have this sex education. And the reason behind it was that there had been a couple of girls who became pregnant out of wedlock in the city of Miami, a couple of girls. Now, I will guarantee you, since that was introduced to resolve this problem of two girls becoming pregnant out of wedlock, that the amount of unwed pregnancy has increased 1,000, perhaps 10,000 fold. So obviously, the objective that they sought to accomplish was hardly not accomplished. I mean, it was just, you talk about a disaster of public policy, but the people at the highest levels instigating this stuff, even back then, they had a long-term agenda. They knew where they were going. They knew that the more that you begin to normalize public discussion of sexuality, the looser the morality will become. And so, of course, we've gone light years from back then, but this is how it began. And there really, as far as I can see, there is really no sound basis for discussion of sex anywhere in school. Anybody who says well, how are kids supposed to get married, have children, and all this? I'm going to tell you, back in the days of the pharaohs, back back in the days of the cavemen, uh, young men learned what sex was about because they talked to other young men, and young women learned about babies and this kind of thing. That's the reality of human life. It's just, sex is a very, very interesting topic when people are young, especially, and they want to know what's it all about. So I don't think that anybody back when I was getting those first sex ed classes, I don't think there was anybody taking them who didn't already know about the birds and the bees and, a little bit of the reality of life. But I have not seen any compelling reason why you would need to address sex as a topic anywhere at any grade in public school. I don't see it accomplishing a single thing of societal value. But we're going to wrap up, and I'd like to just give each of you an opportunity to make a final comment before I close out the show. So Dan, perhaps you would like to make a comment to begin with?
All right. I'm Dan Kleiman. I'm on Twitter at Safe Libraries and at Sex Harassed. But here's the key to what you can do in your communities to stop this. The most important thing you can do is get on boards, library boards, and especially school boards. That's how you're going to stop it. Just going up to these people and saying, please stop it. Look at the things you're showing to my kids. It's harming them. They don't care. Don't care. You have to get on the boards.
That's a good comment. Yes, and Suzanne, what you have been through this battle. What do you see some progress being made in that regard?
Well, we in Loudoun County, we have school board elections this year, and they're crucial. And so it's crucial to back the right people. We've not had a majority for the past 3.5 years that thinks along the line that we do, which has hurt us. I've sat in school board meetings where these librarians show up. They show up with a book. One was called Dream. They call themselves that they are library scientists people. They're the experts of what children need. They read a Lane book about Dream, which is about kids that are in a theater group or whatever. And then first there was opposite sex attraction, and then same sex, and a kiss between two boys. And she waves it around like, oh, parents are upset over this, a kiss. It's just a kiss. And they will never sit there with genderqueer. They will never sit there and read the crudest of the crude. And so people have to stop sitting back and accepting that they're the librarian, they're the expert. In fact, what drives me nuts as well is the librarians are in public schools. They're allowed to pretty much order what they want. At least that's what it's come to be. They're not their own businesses. There should be standards within the schools. There should be regulation, and there should be hardcore rebuttal from them of proof of why they think these need to be. And the last thing is, people will say, oh, the book hardly gets checked out. Of course these hardly get checked out because the kids know where to go to find it and take their peeks and see their stuff and then place it back. And it probably gets in a lot more kids' hands, obviously that way, because they're not paying attention. And so it's not regulated. The parents don't know what they're seeing because that, it's the sneak peeks. And then there's inclusive books in the classroom, which Loudoun has as well, that the parents never know about.
Yes, and I will tell you that the mild book that you're referring to would have been extraordinarily offensive to me as a parent. But then I had a homosexual attempt to kidnap me as a child. It did not go very well for him. I think he regretted it probably to his dying day. But I'd be outraged with any book that talks about a boy kissing another boy. So, but the point that you were making is that is nothing compared to the graphic depictions in genderqueer and that type of thing. And then Laura, if you could give us your closing thoughts.
Sure, three things. First of all, the book Genderqueer, by the way, Loudoun County Public Schools claims has been removed from the libraries, and it has been, and it's been taken from the library and put on the classroom shelves. So it is not out of the schools. This is what the flyer looks like. Senator, maybe there's some way we could arrange to get these out to people if they want them. I'm not sure, but I'm happy to do that. 2 points I want to make, 2 other points. One is the Loudoun County Republican Women's Committee is collecting wholesome books, and every year they donate these to the schools at the beginning of the school year. So that's one thing. Shout out to them. And third, vote, 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 vote. We have 33 elections coming up in Loudoun County. Our school board, our board of supervisors, our House and Senate, and our constitutional officers. And that is the only way we're going to make changes, if we take back our government.
I agree with that, and I'm just so grateful for all of the things that each of you are doing. Suzanne, thank you so much. Dan, I appreciate. Yes, did you have a final?
Yeah. One more thing.
Okay.
This is becoming so bad that the White House, the Biden administration, has adopted specifically the American Library Association's Marxist thinking. By reference to American Library Association, and now they are going to the Department of Education, and the Department of Education is now going to enforce rules that inclusive and diverse books, which we know means sexually inappropriate, must be allowed in schools, and parents will not be allowed to challenge this anymore. The First Amendment is out the window because we all know the goals have nothing to do with the America. And it speaks so what's been going on at the American Library Association for decades has now been adopted by our current administration and will be enforced on us nationwide.
Can I just jump on that and add that we're not homophobes. The books that are in the schools are not just books about homosexuality and transgender. There's plenty of heterosexual, inappropriate descriptions of heterosexual sex as well. It's all, none of it should be in the schools. Reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Absolutely. And Laura, did you have any other comment before we close? And Suzanne?
No, just thank you, Senator Black, for putting on these podcasts. It's really helpful, and I hope people are listening. And I think outside of voting, which of course is important, people have to be speaking. They have to show up to these meetings and speak. They have to speak and educate others. So many people to this day don't realize that the extent it is, and it's up to us to be the word, the mouthpiece to educate others and encourage them to be there. And when you go to a school board meeting and you say, oh, they're not listening, I will tell you this, there are people that do actually listen in that aren't in the room. And I've spoken to some LCPS employees that I had never met in person before and was at a meeting with the superintendent and a school board member late this school year. And both these ladies had said to me, I recognize your voice. And I recognize your voice from them listening into the school board meetings.
Yes, I will close out, but I want people to understand, you may be in a district that has a completely intractable school board or library board, one that simply, as you say, just doesn't respond to the public. But what is happening is that all across America, to some extent, across the Western world of Western civilization, there is a great awakening taking place towards the level of depravity and decadence that has pervaded all of government, even up to the White House and European government, certainly. And it sort of reached a critical mass, and it didn't do it simply because we had the votes, because we didn't have the votes. It is important to get the votes, but even if you can't, don't simply give up, because you're not going to get the vote in every jurisdiction. And it is very important to stand up and to clearly articulate an important viewpoint that represents, I think, most parents in the great majority of jurisdictions. So we will continue to fight on. I think the good news is that there is a cultural awakening. I think to some extent people are beginning to realize that this ancient connection between homosexuality and pedophilia was not imaginary from time immemorial all the way up until the last 10 or 20 years. Everybody else was not an idiot, and suddenly we've become clear-eyed geniuses now. There, there is a reason. When I was growing up, they cautioned boys about hitchhiking and about what that might result in, and cautioned people to watch out if you see strange men in the bathroom, and particularly with boys, it was a problem. And people are beginning to realize with the grooming in the school, this is a real thing. This is not an imaginary thing. Now that's my viewpoint. My viewpoint is biased because I ended up having a fist fight with the man who had given me a ride, and also I have been involved in overseeing the prosecution of many cases where you had soldiers who molested children or who attacked their bunkmates and this type of thing in the military. So I have a biased viewpoint, but it's also an informed viewpoint. And in any event, at whatever level we are, we all can agree that it is improper to have these sexually graphic materials in our schools and in our public libraries too. In any event, I want to thank our guests for being here. You really are an extraordinary group. And so this is Senator Dick Black. Thank you for being with us on Focus on the News. We will see you next Monday at 11 a.m.